All right, let's talk about the Oklahoma Sooners a little bit. Look, obviously, you guys, solid start to the season, undefeated, 4-0, number 14 in the latest AP rankings. Although that Cincinnati Bearcats win wasn't as dominant as you probably would have hoped, it's still a double-digit road win against a solid team. But during all these games over this past weekend, there was one big report that kind of came out, it was kind of under the radar, but it outlined a really smart move the Oklahoma Sooners did that I think will set them up for massive long-term success.
Yeah, Nick, as Oklahoma comes to the end of its Big 12 tenure, I think this story that you dug up shows how big the next few steps in their progression are going to be. And this story is just really interesting of how exactly it's all going to pan out, working out very well for Oklahoma. But we mentioned Big 12 last year in the Big 12. Oklahoma, you're about to start Big 12 play at home versus Iowa State, coming off a tough road game. You're able to get it done over Cincinnati. So let's hear at home, start a Big 12 play. What is the score versus Iowa State gonna be? Let us know in the comment section below what the score versus Iowa State will be. But Nick, let's get on into it. What is going on with Oklahoma?
Look, like I said in the opening there, right? Obviously, off to a solid start, Big 12 play, like you alluded to, right around the corner. But one of the things we've noticed from Oklahoma is that they're setting themselves up for long-term success, especially as they transfer into the SEC starting next season. And everyone who was following this the past year or so, when it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas, of course, would be splitting from the Big 12 to join the SEC, all the reports were is that it would cost Oklahoma and Texas, but we'll focus on Oklahoma here, tens of millions of dollars. In fact, roughly $100 million. Now, again, transferring to the SEC is obviously worth it, but a $100 million hit in the short term, that's pretty devastating. But it turns out that Oklahoma managed to somehow negotiate an incredible deal for themselves. The Athletic did a lot of great reporting highlighting it. We compiled a few things from the Athletic. Miles, if you want to throw up the report, I'll read from it, and then we'll get into the details on the other side. All right, again, from the Athletic, the Big 12 said Oklahoma and Texas were slated to forfeit a combined $100 million in revenue distribution when it was announced in February the schools were leaving the conference and joining the SEC in 2024. The USA Today report, this is what the Athletic is citing here, indicates the Big 12 opted for a more amicable and less financially beneficial split than the league bylaws specified, with the conference telling the outlet that more than $80 million of that is based on money the schools will not get in 2024, 2025, the year after the move. The report offers further evidence of something many college football fans have been increasingly aware of and irritated by, the influence of television networks on conference realignment. Texas and Oklahoma will both receive transition payments from these networks. All right, this was a lot of information there to digest. Here's how I took it, and I think this is exactly what's going on. So Oklahoma was essentially going to have to write a check for whatever, $100 million, give or take, right, to the Big 12 after they transferred to the SEC, and it would be processed over months and years, however they worked that out in the courtroom. What it really looks like here is that of that $100 million, $80 million of that was basically revenue Oklahoma was not going to get from the Big 12 in 2024. Now, obviously, Oklahoma won't be in the Big 12 in 2024. They'll be in the SEC. They'll be collecting SEC revenue. So that $100 million fine, essentially, to the Oklahoma Sooners, they negotiated that down to essentially $20 million because that $80 million becomes irrelevant. And here's where it gets crazy. Based on this reporting, it looks like networks, mainly ESPN in this case, who's invested more in getting SEC games, basically paid Oklahoma millions of dollars, a huge portion of that remaining $20 million to kind of offset Oklahoma. So basically, Oklahoma is going from the Big 12 to the SEC, a massive move for the program. And they're doing it not at a cost to the program, but essentially, for all intents and purposes, a break even. Look, this is absolutely outstanding by the Oklahoma Sooners. And this was athletic director to the president, to everyone involved to get this deal done. This may be the biggest move the Oklahoma Sooners have made in the past 18 to 24 months. A lot of big recruits, obviously bringing Venables into the fold, a lot of big transfers. But this move here, not only just moving to the SEC, which I think is the pivotal thing for the program to do, but essentially negotiating the fact there would be no more fine, both negotiations with the Big 12 and with the television networks. I think Oklahoma, and let's give credit where credit is due, Texas was lumped in here as well, pulled off a masterclass move by doing this, Miles. But let me throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on the details of this deal and just how it worked out for the Sooners program?
Yeah, Nick, I think this was a great move by Oklahoma. Like you alluded to, initially they looked like they had owed $100 million, which is tough. Money is everything in college football now. To lose $100 million, devastating to a program, but you think SEC move is probably going to be worth it. Now you dig into things and realize things aren't exactly as they seem. $80 million vanishes off the top because you said, like you said, this is just money that we'll take out of what you wouldn't get in the Big 12, which doesn't make any sense why they would say that because, like, as you alluded to, they're not in the Big 12. They're in the SEC now. So they're going to be getting money from the SEC. So that doesn't matter to them. Now, the $20 million is there, and there's an undisclosed transition payment ESPN gives you. So I think a lot of that 20 million is probably relieved as well. You get off basically scot-free getting an upgrade coming into one of the two big time conferences nowadays, the Big 10 or the SEC. And the SEC gets one of the biggest names, now two of the biggest names in all of college football. You think of Oklahoma, and the other team named is Texas as well, who's involved in this deal. I think this is huge for Oklahoma and for the SEC. I think Oklahoma is definitely going to get much more revenue moving to the SEC than they would have even imagined getting in the Big 12. I think this is going to be a big time move for them. But I just love the move because it shows how much Oklahoma is planning for the future. Oklahoma looks very, very good this year, and I think they could go far. Do I think they get... I'll put it this way. They could get into the college football playoff. I don't think they win the college football playoff at the level they are right now, but they're very close. But they're planning now. They get into SEC play. They're going to be able to recruit better. They're going to have more money. We look at their 2024 recruiting class, one of the best in the country, top 10, number 7 overall recruiting classes in 2024. And that's not even with transfers. Oklahoma did very well with transfers and stuff like that as well. I think this could be a really big time move for them, just boosting this program to the next level where we all want them to get back to being as perennial college football playoff contenders. I just think they have set themselves up beautifully, Nick.
Oh, and just one final point to end on here. It's important to understand that 90% of the time when a team changes conferences, it takes a few years of just beating your head against the wall, sometimes even longer than that, right? Miami Hurricanes, for example, Big East to ACC, they really haven't been the same since, right? Sometimes, Nebraska transferred to the Big Ten. That's been a debacle for the Cornhuskers for the better part of a decade, right? It's just more common than it is not that when you move to a new conference, even for financial reasons, your program takes a hit because you lose a lot of that money. You have those couple years where you're down on dollars. You can't invest in the recruiting and the facilities. You fall behind and you can't catch up. It's a vicious cycle. Oklahoma will avoid that completely with how they negotiate these deals with the Big 12 and, of course, looping in the television networks as well. So this is the best news here for Oklahoma that you could possibly imagine. Not only are they getting the long-term benefit of moving to the SEC, they also won't have a drop-off in investment during that transition. And I think that's the crucial part of the story right here.